Okay, so welcome to part 7 of Learn Go. In this video, we'll be covering the switch statement. So if you programmed in C++ or Java before, you've most likely used the switch statement, and if so, the syntax for the switch statement in Go will be very familiar to you. Let's just start writing out a switch statement, and then we'll explain as we go if this is a foreign concept for you. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a variable I, which will just be an integer that I'll set to 2, just to illustrate an example, and I'm going to use switch. So switch is a keyword, so you can see it's highlighted there, and we're going to switch based on the variable I. And inside of the switch statement here, we'll have different cases, and depending on which one of these cases is true, it will determine which one of the cases gets triggered. So we can say case is also a keyword, case 1. So this case will be triggered if the variable that we're switching based on is 1. So this case, for the case of I is equal to 2, this won't ever happen. If we changed I to 1, then whatever we put here in case 1 will be triggered. Let's just go ahead and print out a statement if this was the case. So we'll say print line 1. Otherwise, we can say case 2. So again, this is evaluating I being equal to 2. And if this was the case, which it is in this case, since we've set I equal to 2, we'll go ahead and say print line 2. And then we'll just have another one, which will say case 3. And then we'll say format.println 3. So let's go ahead and write this, and then we'll clear the screen and go ahead and run it. So again, let's go run. This is called 7_switch.go. So if we do that, we see the second case with 2 was triggered, and so therefore we printed out the word 2. So for instance, if I go back up here and I change this to 3, go ahead and write that, run it again, then we'll see that the output of 3 is triggered. So if I put something else that's not covered in the switch statement, like 4, nothing happens. So none of the cases were triggered in the switch statement because we only specifically had cases for when I is equal to 1, 2, or 3. We're switching based on I. So we can also do multiple cases in one case statement. So for instance, let's define a variable j. So we'll set j is equal to, let's say, 5. And then we'll use the switch statement. So we'll say switch j, again, open, close curly brace. And we'll say case 1, 2. So these are multiple cases in one statement here. So we can say case 1, 2. So if j is either equal to 1 or 2, this particular statement will get triggered. So in that case, we'll say format.println 1 or 2. And then we can have another case here. We'll say case 3. This is format.println. We'll just say 3. And then let's just say another thing that we haven't covered so far is a default case. So in the instance that we covered above here, we either had case 1, case 2, or case 3 be triggered. None of those cases were triggered, and so therefore nothing happened inside of this switch statement. What we can do here is if none of these cases are triggered inside of this switch statement, we can add something called default. So if none of the cases are triggered, if it falls through all the way to default, this one will be triggered. So what we can do here is we can say format.println not 1, 2, or 3. So in the case here, we have j is equal to 5, so the default case should be triggered. Let's go ahead and write that and run this statement. So it says not 1, 2, or 3, and that's again because the default case here was triggered. One final variation or flavor of a switch statement is one in which does not have a variable after the keyword switch. So this operates very much like an if statement. So essentially we'll switch here, and then we'll just put in a case, let's say j equal to 5. That's maybe one case that we can evaluate there. And if that's the case that we want to consider, let me indent this. We can print out a message, let's say format.println j comma is equal to 5, and we can have another case here, let's say j less than 5, and again we'll print out a message that says j comma is less than 5, and then finally we can have a case j, let's say greater than 5, format.println j is greater than 5. So in this case, there's no j, but basically this switch just goes through and it evaluates each of these case statements, kind of similar to like an if else, if. So let's go ahead and run this and just see what we get for output. So again, j we initially set to 5 up there on line 16. So if we run that, we should see the first case in the second switch, or in the third final switch that we have there, get triggered. So we see not 1, 2, or 3 from the previous switch statement, and then 5 is equal to 5, which is the initial case here that got triggered. So that's pretty much it for this video. The switch statement will most likely be familiar, again, if you're coming from a background of C++ or Java. If you're coming from Python, I don't know if it probably will be less familiar to you. So that's it. The code, as always, will be hosted on my GitHub link as well, so you can download that there. If you have any comments or questions or anything else, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the section below. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.